let's get started here. So welcome everyone. It's been kind of a week. There's been a few things going on. So I'd like to welcome everyone who looks like caught a little bit of the old stuff. So I'd like to welcome everyone who got here. Is already here. So first of all, I'm going to post the phone number. Again, this is intended not just for me to be talking about a variety of things. Hopefully I'm going to be talking about things that might help us all. But also this is for calling in. So go ahead if you like and call in the phone number that I just posted here. You can talk to me and I'll just put it right here and we'll have a conversation. Now, also, I do encourage you to talk to me in the chat. There is a little bit of delay that's going on with the chat, so just be aware of that. So I'm not going to be responding quite as quickly real time as I'd like, but still should be pretty good. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the situation that we're in, and of course coronavirus, but we're going to talk about how to deal with life in the situation that we're in. This is something that I've sort of been talking a little bit about in some of these live streams, where we go over more than anything else just the risk that you can take, the risk that you are currently under, what is going on. Now, I think that it is possible to have a very real conversation about risk without it being something that is, shall we say, negligent. I think that right now we live in a situation where there's a lot more information than there was. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I want to kind of take stock of where we are, what the situation is right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up the Google report on the current state of coronavirus, which, I mean, let's be honest, anytime we look at this kind of stuff, it does get a little bit scary. But yeah, so we are currently at 7 million cases, slightly over 7 million cases, a little over 200,000 deaths. And that is pretty huge. That is a lot. I don't really know what to say about all of that. I have been lucky in that so far it has not been anyone that I know personally that has been affected in that way. But so far, I guess I can say, knock on wood, so good. Right? Okay. I have had one person who I believe died as a result, at least partially, of coronavirus, and I'd like to remember Keith Pace here. Okay, so, but let's take a look at the new cases situation. So this is overall our trend line here is been going down. It's slightly going up. And as I say before, the main reason why this is probably going up is schools. So if you're not in a situation where you are, living in a dormitory or, living with other college students or going to class with college students, then you're far less likely to have to worry about this. But just be aware that that is probably where most of that's coming from. Now let's take a look at the new cases. We had 45,000 new cases yesterday. That is a somewhat uptick. You can kind of see we've got a bit of a slight rising trend here overall. So overall, not the greatest news, but not the worst news. Now, speaking of news, let's move on from that, because there is a good news sticky on the coronavirus support, or the COVID-19 support subreddit, and I would like to go over this. By the way, I would like to, at this moment, thank Jennifer Cole, who has spent the time to be putting all of this together, and certainly, honestly, it's something I'm glad to see that there is one of many places where people can come together for this. So first of all, there is some good news, in case you had not heard about it, that if you have had the COVID-19 immunity, there has been some debate about how long does immunity last, can you catch it again, so on and so forth. Right now, this point in time, indications are that immunity should last more than a year. So that's very good news. So that if you do catch it, and even if it's a mild case, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment, but even if it's a mild case, your immunity should keep you inoculated, protected for, I mean, if you caught it now, theoretically, at least a year from today. So should be good. Now, there are cases which are coming up here and there where people are getting reinfected in a shorter period of time. Again, there are a number of complicating factors that are happening in those cases, and those are very few and far between. Enough, though, that it was enough to realize that it could happen, so they have been looking into it. Usually if you caught it, you're going to be good for at least a year. So that's good news. There's vaccine trials that seem to be going quite well. Doctors are getting better at treating the cases as they become more experienced. Short version is doctors are getting better at treating it. Fewer people are dying in the hospitals because they are working on it. Also, the work with the drugs have improved, that kind of thing. So there's several things going on. Now, another one that I noticed here that I thought was really good, and I'm going to roll this up to the top here so that we're pointing out it. I want to point out up here. As we all get better at not, I love the way she put it in this one. As we all get better at not coughing each other, influenza goes down considerably in most countries. Seriously, people, did we need a pandemic to show us this? But yeah, this is good news. Now, as much as I myself often become concerned about the situation with a kind of a combination in the winter coming along with an influenza, a flu season along with COVID, as bad as that could be, if we're taking these cautions to keep us from spreading coronavirus, we're not going to spread the flu either. So ideally, I generally don't wear a mask in the winter to keep from, spreading viruses, and honestly, I generally don't get the flu shot, so I might have been a person who, was spreading the flu around. This season, I'm going to be getting the flu shot. I'm going to be wearing a mask. I'm not going to, these are a lot of things going to make it so that it's going to be, good. So we should have a much milder flu season overall. And it's just because of the things that we're doing to keep ourselves safe from coronavirus. So, hey, good on us. All right, so another one, she put up a link to the coronavirus anxiety workbook. I like this a lot. I have been talking a little bit about it. And then she talks a little bit about the live streams that we have here. Now, one thing I do want to note, you may be linking to some of the live streams that you find on Reddit. Now, if there is personal information, identifying information, something like that, that is somehow shared during a live stream, at this point in time, I'm simply making them private so that they're not accessible. I will be going through and spending some time editing out that information so that people can go back and review the stream later. But for now, just for people's privacy and safety, if there's something like that that comes up, I'm simply putting on private. So you'll find some of them that you're just not going to, the link's going to be dead. Sorry about that. That's the situation as it is now. Okay, so let's focus a little bit more on talking about risk here. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and reference this here. Now, I am going to say this. I personally found this difficult and frustrating to listen to. I listen to a fair number of podcasts. At work, I work fairly physically, and so I can, listen to these and work at the same time sometimes. And this is the Ezra Klein Show. And I actually, before I've listened to a couple of these recent podcasts, I actually thought I liked Ezra Klein better than I did. He's pretty good. But this is referencing how to think about coronavirus risk in your life. I do not recommend, if you want to listen to this, it doesn't get a strong recommend from me. The main reason being is that there is a lot of just, how to put it? For me, it's frustrating. It's a lot of excusing behaviors of people that, I don't necessarily want to excuse their behavior. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that there, but going to get into that a bit. But this is where I'm getting a lot of this. Now, the person who was interviewed in this particular podcast was Julia Marcus, and she primarily actually works about risk when it comes to HIV prevention. So she's got a little bit of experience in thinking about this kind of thing. So that said, that is where a lot of this is coming from. A lot of it is also sort of bringing in from some other sources, some things that are referenced here, a bit of just general information. So, but let's talk about this. So I'm going to switch this over because I've kind of going to switch over to just kind of talking for a bit here. Okay, so now the thing about risk is that we are in a situation where it exists. We are going to be having a certain amount of risk that we're going to have to deal with when it comes to just life right now. And that is, well, I mean, and what I mean by that is that this is unfortunately a situation where, as much as we would like it to be, it cannot really realistically be an all or nothing proposition for the next several months. This had it could have been an all or nothing proposition. It could have been a situation where, if we had all respected lockdown and we had done something to actually prevent, stop this pandemic in its tracks, then, or even if we just did it right now, if we could somehow guarantee that everybody locked down for 8 solid weeks, then we could treat it as an all or nothing situation. But right now, I hate to say it, and it's hard for me to say this, but we have to accept that this is not the kind of all or nothing situation. That living in that is not something that is realistic to be doing for the next year or longer. So we have to really think about what level of risk is appropriate for us to undergo. Now, I'm going to start by doing a little bit of those apologetics that that frustrated me so much. But one of the most important things, and if you see me looking down off the side, it's these notes that I've got right here. But one of the most important things about all of this to me was really remembering that to see each other as people, not just vectors. Okay, and this is one of those situations where, okay, so somebody without a mask, goes walking past me, and I glare at them. I'm not happy about that, and I pull my mask a little bit tighter, or whatever it may be, and I step a little bit further away from them. I'm not treating them as a person. I'm treating them as a vector. Okay, now, admittedly, okay, certain things there are appropriate. Making certain that I have 6 feet distance, probably appropriate if I can possibly do that. Glaring at them, not. Okay, and this is coming from somebody who, if you've heard some of the other things I've talked about on live streams, I have gotten very much in people's faces about not wearing masks in many situations. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk a little bit about some of the anxiety stuff here, but the important thing to do is to remember that even if these people are making very poor decisions, they are people. And it is one of those things where if we forget that, we lose a part of ourselves. So let's talk about a group which may be difficult to have empathy with, maybe not. Okay, for me, it took me a minute to kind of get into this headspace because, well, I mean, my daughter's this age, but she's not in this situation. Okay, so college campuses, all right. College kids are being asked to basically not live their lives, to not live the life that they were expecting to have when they went to college, right? They went to college expecting some kind of experience where they were going to go out and, not all kids are going there for the party and that kind of thing. God, this is not Arizona State University around here, but pardon me to Arizona State University folks, but your reputation, all right? But nevertheless, the point is that there's so many things that college, okay, is involved that is not just going to the classes for so many people. So asking them to completely give it up is asking a whole lot. By the same token, all right, let's talk about this with younger folks. Okay, let's talk about this with elementary kids, middle school kids, and high school kids. Now, this is not a case where we are asking them. It's a case where school boards, individuals, various other folks are making various asks. But with that being the situation, then we are still kind of, we have to ask what we're asking them to give up. We're asking them to give up an education. We're asking them to give up their social life. Now, for many, this is appropriate. This is what needs to be going on. But for some, they need to be going to school, or that might be the situation that their parents or their families make. So if that's the situation, then we have to ask again, okay, for them, for the college students, how can these needs be met safely? So let's talk about that. All right, that's I'm gonna switch over here to a little bit of showing off some web page here again. All right. Okay, so now there's actually a few articles on this. Now, what I'm going to talk about here basically is putting together a quarantine bubble, or a quarantine pod, as they call it in this one. But nevertheless, quarantine bubble. So you probably already have one, and you may or may not think about it. Usually, it's typically the people that you live with. Now, the question is how much is it formalized? How much is the quarantine bubble agreed to? I have many friends who, unfortunately, are not really in a quarantine bubble. They're simply in a situation where they have roommates who are doing what they're doing, and they're trying to do what they do, and they're constantly frustrated by their roommates. So for this, I would say, if you can, and there are many situations where you cannot have this conversation, but if you're at a point where you can comfortably, where it will not increase your anxiety to go out and to have this kind of risk, to increase your risk, because this is increasing your risk, or maybe it's not. But what you do is you go to the people, if they're your roommates, your family, whoever they are, and you say, I would like to treat this as a quarantine bubble. Can we have certain rules? And the rules that you want, let's be honest, may not be the rules that you really can have people agree to. So there's a certain level of compromise. But the thing about it is that at the very least, hopefully you can come to more compromise. There will be more safety going on than happening before the communication and the establishment of quarantine bubble, and you at least can have some idea what can happen. So I'm just going to read this off here. You've probably seen this. So to make an effective quarantine go, right? Okay, anyway, here's what you need to do. First, everyone must agree to follow the rules and be honest and open about their actions. So this is really one of the critical points I want to point out here, is that it is really easy for people to go, oh yeah, sure, okay. Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I didn't go to the gym, or whatever it may be. You've got to be honest. You've got to be honest where you are at as you are forming the quarantine bubble. So, now, as you're forming the quarantine bubble, I actually want to switch over to this one right here. CNN did a good article about this, and one of the things that they were pointing out, was it this one? No, it wasn't this one. It's probably this one here. Okay, but anyway, one of the things they were pointing out was the people that you choose to hang out with. Basically, the long story short is, okay, I'm not finding it here, so I'll just switch back to this for now. But long story short is the people you want to have in your quarantine bubble are actually people that you can trust. That's going back to the being open and honest thing. That is more important than, somebody who you have fun with, a partner, whatever it may be, somebody who you're hoping to hook up with, whatever it is, okay? That's not the way that you form it. You've got to have people who you can trust and you can communicate with. So a certain amount of that is that you probably also want to have people who are already of like mind in forming this. Now, this can be a problem when you're dealing with roommates, and so your compromises may have to be greater. Now, the thing that we have to think about is the individual behaviors put the whole group at risk, and so again, trust is important. If somebody breaks the quarantine, then they need to go ahead and let the rest of the group know. And there's a few ways of dealing with this. This one says the whole group should self-isolate for 14 days. Some of these other articles, I'm not going to try and sort through them right now live, but some of these other articles, they will recommend things like, have that person isolate in their room alone, etc. So, and do not have them out in common areas with other people, things like this. Or if they have to use common areas, obviously, then you clear out that area so they can make it through, right? Okay. So there's a few things that you can do for that. So I would recommend taking a look at some of these articles. Now the other thing is that this is kind of what we're getting to. Everyone must decide how much risk is acceptable and establish rules to reflect that decision. So some people might feel okay about a close family member coming to visit, others may not. So in this particular one, this writer, I believe it's her, has agreed that everyone only visit with friends outside, not inside, and that people wear masks. And that actually, has been what I've been doing with most of my friends when they've been visiting. I'll invite them over. I've got some chairs set up outside, and we sit down and we talk outside. I'm glad it's Florida for me here because it might be kind of hot and sweaty in here tonight, but at least it's pleasant enough outside, to put on a mask and talk to my friends. Unfortunately, that is as close as I've gotten to some of my friends who I really, really deeply wish I could be much closer with, but unfortunately, I can't. And that's just because of the level of quarantine that they are under. Now, that's some very, very good ideas. Now, of course, lastly, just in all of this, you have to actually follow the rules, comply with social distancing, yada, 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 yada. And, of course, be forthcoming. So basically, the most important thing, and I think you can probably read through all of these articles, and really the most important factor is going to be this. Is it people who you can trust? Is it people who are at least of like mind that you feel that you can trust when they break this? So that really is ideally how you build one. Now I'm going to throw in some links real quick here. First I'm going to throw in the link to the one that I've just been looking at. Let me see if I can find the page. There we go. So this is the one for the page that I have had up here. Here is for the New York Times article. Now, admittedly, I do not necessarily generally recommend New York Times articles. They do tend to be paywalled, that kind of thing. There are ways around it. If somebody needs some help getting around it, let me know. Let's see. And lastly, we've got the CNN article. I'd start, honestly, with the first article, move on to this third one that I'm linking, and finish with the New York Times article. The New York Times article, I think, goes the most in depth in how to build one and the various things to consider, so on and so forth. But really, honestly, it's what's your risk level, and are you dealing with people who you can feel open and forthcoming with? Okay, so let's go ahead, close that up for a little while. All right. Now, so let's talk a little bit about risk overall. So we've talked about bubbles. Now, this bubble, let's talk about how this could be applied. So one, of course, would be if we were talking about college students. Theoretically, you could have one hall or one dorm or whatever it might be a bubble. Now, this is a problem when they start going to class. Depends on how the social distancing is working in classes, etc. But that theoretically is one way that could work. So you see like a group of college kids all partying together. Well, honestly, if they are in their quarantine bubble, then more power to them. I mean, at least they figured out a way to survive and have fun in this mess. So could be worse. Let's see what else we have here. All right, so now let's actually. Now I'm again going to give some credit to Ezra Klein and Julie, I believe, in that podcast that I was listening to. So let's talk about a little bit of thinking realistically about risk, and in this level, what is, if you're going to do something, how can you think about this? Now, I understand that this is perhaps a bit of a practice in cutting things a little bit fine, so on and so forth, but there are times And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the anxiety involved here a little bit later on. Sure, great. But there are times where all of this just gets to be so much that it can be hard to really think, okay, this is something. How do I deal with this? Do I need to do this, etc., so on and so forth. So let's go over now. There's 5 steps to this, and these are sort of the 5 things that you need to think about as you're deciding whether or not this is something that you should do. So this goes on a case-by-case basis. So the first 2 things are on a case-by-case individual basis. The first thing is, is this something which is important for you to do? So there's a couple of examples now, and I really want to make clear that what is important for you to do may not simply be, for example, going and taking care of the car, or perhaps going to the doctor, or whatever it may be. Those are ones that are fairly obvious, but there's other ones which, if we're talking realistically about risk, you may be able to say, okay, what is this? Is this a situation that has true benefit to me? And what I mean by that is, honest to goodness, your mental health. Okay, if you are literally stuck inside in the city in like a tiny apartment, or in your room, or wherever it is, then taking a risk that is a low measured risk that will make you feel a whole lot better. And I'm gonna say this, okay? I'm gonna say this, okay? Haircuts, okay? I obviously don't give 2 hoots. I gotta let that heal up, right? But obviously, doesn't matter to me. So I mean, for me, it's really easy to be judgy, okay? All the Karens wanted haircuts. We demand haircuts. But if it's something that, honest to God, you need, that is making you feel better, and you can find a way of doing it without it being a high risk, then maybe it's a thing that you can do. Now, other things that are better than that, I would recommend going outside, finding a park, taking a walk in some place where you will actually feel like you can breathe. Okay? Wherever you need to go, drive way out. If you have to drive a half hour or an hour out to the boonies to get there, go out to the boonies, and find some place where you can just take off the mask for a minute. There's nobody around, or at least nobody for hundreds of feet. Okay, and you can take off the mask and you can look around and be like, okay. So now, that is a risk that might be reasonable for you. So that is one which might be considered a necessary risk. Now, then there's things that we think of as necessary risks that may not be. We have many more options that sometimes, when we are in the whole, we don't always think of them. One of the best examples of this is, I was talking to a friend of mine who was like, oh yeah, I had to go get this thing, and blah, 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 and I was all freaked out about it, so on and so forth. And so I say to him, well, I don't know about that particular place that I forget what it was. I think it was like an auto part or something. I don't think it was an auto part. I've been buying auto parts recently, so that's what's on my mind. But it was something like that. And I was like, if you just call around, I'm sure you can find some place that sells that does curbside pickup. And you just call them up. You say, I need this item, and they'll either direct you to the website, or you can give them your credit card there, and they'll sell it to you. And you drive up, and boom, this is my order number, and they take it out to you, and you never leave your car. Okay, now that is not perfectly safe, but if you're in a situation where you have to do something like that, then do something like that. Other things, think about it. There are a lot of drive-through pharmacies still. If you can switch to a drive-through pharmacy, I personally would be doing that right now. If you need to go do that to get your meds, do that, okay? Stay out of the store if you need to stay out of the store. It really just depends on what your level of comfort and what your level of safety is. Now, one of the big things that I want to talk about when it comes to all of this is that overall, okay, there is enough information now to show us that outdoors is much much safer than being indoors. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword. Now, I don't want to freak anybody out, but it does appear that being indoors is now a situation that is less safe than we might have thought it once was. And by that, what I mean is that if you are in an enclosed room where the ventilation is recirculating with the same people over and over again, and you're in that area for an extended period of time, both of those things going on, okay? Keeping that in mind, then you're in a situation where you do have an elevated risk. That being the case, overall, indoor spaces are not the place to be doing things if you can. Outdoor spaces are 20 times less risky than indoor spaces. So, if you can do something outdoors, then do it outdoors. Now, that actually makes me feel pretty good. If you look on my list of videos, you'll see flooding at my job. And you can see the spot that I work in is pretty outdoors. And I wear a mask when I'm doing that, and masks don't just protect others, they also protect me to some extent, particularly the tight-fitting mask and the eyewear that I wear for my job. So, guess what? I feel fairly comfortable in that work, and that's one of the reasons why I've continued to work. Now, there's other people at my job where their job is they don't have that space. I mean, there's been ropes that have been put up sometimes, but people are coming right up on them, and and I hate to say it, but with people just choosing not to respect that space, where you have to, at the job, you have to say, give me that 6 feet, give me that six feet. That's a job I would not be doing right now. I do not feel comfortable with me doing that job, anybody in my bubble, anybody I love doing that job. I just, too close, too tight in, not happy with that at all. So think about that. Just where are you at? Where are you going? If you're going to a situation that is outdoors, then go ahead. That is 20 times safer than a situation that's indoors. So think about it that way. Okay, if you're going to do it outdoors, whole lot better. Maybe you can do it that way, right? Okay. So now, you also have to think about how much risk there is, and this is sort of going into that second thing, and that is how much risk there is in that single action. So some actions obviously are riskier than others. Doing something outdoors makes it a less risky action. Going through drive-through to pick up your prescription versus going into the store, all of these things, they can make it fairly, a difference over time, just as far as habits goes. Now, another thing that comes into all of this, so the first two are just, kind of do the, is this something that I have to do? What is the true benefits to me of this? And keep in mind that your mental health is one of those benefits. Then number two, think about how much risk that single action has, which brings us to number three. What is the likelihood of infection in your area? What's the infection rate? Okay, this makes me kind of want to play pandemic, but what's the infection rate? So if you're in an area that has a high infection rate, if you're in an area where, there's just a higher likelihood of transmission, then, consider that much more seriously. You can look at maps, you can look and see where it's going. The thing that I brought up earlier, the Google information, basically if you just go to Google News and type coronavirus, it'll just pop up that page and will give you the information. And you can actually click on that map and dig in pretty fine and see what your county's reporting is like and be like, oh, well, it's not looking so good right now, or oh, it's okay right now, just depending on where you're at. And so that's one way you can look at that. That is variable. Keep that in mind. That is not individual or situation, but it does change over time. Now, there are things that are not going to change over time. All right, and that's 4 and 5. These are things that are basically going to stay the same. One is your personal vulnerability. So there's a fair amount of talk throughout all of this about what various comorbidity factors are. Everything from baldness. Yes, believe it or not, I read about that one. Don't worry about that one, by the way, if you happen to be bald. It's not like really high up there. It's just like, oh, I recognize that one too. There's various others. But let's talk about a couple of things. I don't know if you've heard these, and keeping in mind that I can link to some sources on this, but nevertheless, I wouldn't take too much of it super as gospel. Let's just say that. So One is that you've probably heard that vitamin D, if you have fairly high levels of vitamin D in your system, when you are diagnosed with coronavirus, then you typically have a lower viral load and you have a higher chance of surviving. So that's, two good things right there. That's, two good things right there just from taking vitamin D. So if you can take a multivitamin on a daily, do so. Not a bad idea anyway, right? Okay. And honestly, there's a lot of things in here that come up, not a bad idea anyway. All right. So the other thing, another thing that can affect that is your blood type. Now, this is the one which comes with a real caveat. There are a couple of papers on this there's like a few papers on this that are published. There's a few pre-published papers on this that are talking about it. It's sort of been, talk here and there, so on and so forth. But your blood type does make some difference. And I'm only going to give you the good news. And the good news is this: is that if you are blood type O, then you have a lower risk of having a symptomatic case of COVID-19. You can catch it, but you're actually less likely to have bad symptoms. So, and actually in some cases, people with O don't catch it at all. Just they seem to have some sort of natural resistance to it. So there is some more good news. So think about things like that and consider what your own personal vulnerability is. And also, here's one thing that I want to say about this. Do not catastrophize. Do not, when you're thinking about your own personal vulnerability, don't think about, oh, well, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, I've got this going on. Because if you do that, you're going to come up with a list that's so long that you're going to scare yourself to the point where you're not going to be able to function. So don't do that. Realistically, like, what are your factors? How dangerous is it? Are you old? Okay, that's definitely one of them. Age is a big factor, but not as much as we thought. Of course, blood type. Just go through all those various things and consider what your risk is. Now, the last thing that I want to include in all of this will apply for some of you and will not apply for others. Now, if you're in a situation where your bubble consists of roommates who are young and healthy and don't care, or it's a bunch of college folks, so on and so forth, makes a bit less of a difference. On the other hand, if your bubble includes some older folks for whatever reason, then consider that very strongly as well, because if you have vulnerable people inside your bubble who you're going to be in contact with, that consider that just as strongly as your own vulnerability. So those are the 5 things. Just to review. Okay. What are the benefits? Is it necessary? And also keep in mind that one of the things that can be necessary is keeping your heart and your mind and your spirit healthy. So do that, okay? Secondly, consider the risk of the single action. Consider ways that you can make that action so that it's less risky. We've all seen the pictures. If grandma needs to see the new baby, the baby can stand outside the window and grandma can look through the window. No, really not a good idea right now for grandma to touch the baby. That sucks, I know, but grandma can still see the baby. Grandma can still see the baby every day that you go over there to the window, in fact. However you want to do it. If you can set up so that can happen, great, okay? We all know grandma would love that. So there's a lot of ways where you can make that better. So, benefits, the risk of the individual action, what is the local infection rate, what is the likelihood of catching it just generally in your area, your personal vulnerability, and the vulnerability of those people in your group. And that is a way of just very realistically going through the things. Is this a reasonable risk? Loop back at the end, once you've thought about all of that, what are the benefits? Is it a necessity? Because, that's kind of a good beginning and ending question. And it might be one where in the end you decide, okay, yeah, that is a risk that is worth taking. Okay, so, let me see, do I have any other notes here? No, I've pretty much covered most of the things that I want to talk about here when it comes to the very basic stuff. Yeah, we all know also that a lot of these conversations are ones that we're not necessarily going to be wanting to have. These are ones that a lot of us are going to be forced into. These are situations where people are going to be in our bubble and they're going to be acting in a way where it's not safe. And one of the ways you can start this conversation is by simply saying, you know what? I understand that that you don't think it's appropriate to just, hide the way that I have been, the way that you think I've been hiding, or, doing the things I've been doing to keep safe. And if you can't have that conversation with them, then, well, then have a conversation that's somewhere in between. Try and say to them, okay, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to, be horrible to deal with, whatever it is. And I mean, honestly, I hate to say it, but if you're not in a situation where you can ask these things, then maybe spend some time standing up for your rights a little bit. I mean, don't be a giant pain, but, let people know that, you would really appreciate it if they would respect your health. And I'm not saying become difficult. Ideally, just have an honest conversation with people. But let's be honest, you probably are going to know your roommates and what's going to work pretty well by this point in time. But ideally, just talk to them and tell them, look, I would like to form a bubble. I'd like to have some rules. And one of the big rules, keeping in mind all of this, number one, what you're asking for, is communication and honesty. Because here's the thing, you were going to need to know what kind of risk you actually have, what kind of situation you're in. Okay, I'm going to need one of these. Don't worry, not alcoholic. Okay, yeah, blackberry. All right, so let's I want to do something here. Let's kind of take a moment to think about and talk about ways of relaxing and kind of dealing with the stress in the moment. So, in some of these other streams, I've been talking about things that you can do to kind of manage some of your anxiety in kind of a more sort of general and sort of a kind of heady kind of fashion. But I want to talk about how you can deal with it in an immediate fashion. Before I do that, though, I'm going to do it myself. I talked about this before, and one of the more immediate things you can do is just take those 10 deep breaths. So, pardon me for a moment. Okay. Now, that actually, again, it is amazing to me how much just doing that helps, even just now, just being here in this moment. Okay, but I was, that's not a time to be zen necessarily, and you're letting your mind blank. I was thinking. I was thinking about the people who are gone. I was thinking about my friend Keith. I was thinking about all those who, I mean, there's mass graves. That is just mind-blowing. So, I want to remember them. Maybe those 10 deep breaths can be a moment of silence. Alright. So this is for my friends' loved ones, anyone who has passed, anyone who's come close, even, let's just say that there's a lot of things to grieve right now. So, All right. I guess I just want to say we can be okay. We can make it through it. There's a lot of us who are not going to. There's a lot of us who have not. But I'm hoping that if you're here, you're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of the people around you, and you're going to be safe. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the dealing with anxiety situation, because this is a real problem. All right, it's life right now. Okay, life is full of things to legitimately stress you out. So let's get over to this here. Wrong one. Let me find that. There we go. Okay. So, this was actually just inspired by seeing this floating around the interwebs recently, and you probably have seen this too, but it's not a bad idea, and it's something that, this is the simplified version. There's a more advanced version I'll bring up here in just a moment, but I think this is not a bad idea to just kind of be aware. And I think the simplified version is one that you can remember for that moment. You don't just need to be breathing, great, I do that, that works for me. But sometimes you're in a situation where the mind is spinning. All right, let me talk about this a little more realistically. Let me tell you what I'm really talking about here. Okay, so I banned myself from going into grocery stores about a month ago. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but the short version is I was getting in people's faces to the point that I got punched. I got punched right here. It wasn't bad, and I'm fine. It happens, and it was a situation. But I tried going into the store again. 2-3 nights ago, and I was just getting two things, literally two things, and going into the store, I saw some college kids who were going to the store not wearing masks, and this is grocery shopping, and I don't know why grocery shopping. I think for some reason, something about it's the food that I'm going to be eating or something like that makes it harder for me to see that going on in there, but nevertheless, so that's going on, and I did that thing, I glared. What was I telling you not to do? Don't glare. Oh, I did it. I glared. I'm not even going to talk about the rest of my antisocial behavior. Let's just say that it was muted. It was not so bad that I was in danger of getting punched this time. And that's a good thing, right? Okay. So that being the case, by the time I got out of there, I was having, essentially, in my mind, one of the closest things I've had to a full-blown anxiety attack in a good long time. And I wish I had remembered this while I was in the store. I think it might have helped. I'm not sure. So, you can read it here, but let's go through this. Okay. Breathe deeply. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Okay. Do that. Okay. Do that a few times. You don't have to do the 10 deep breaths that I do. However you want to do it, fine. Okay. Then, as you do this, try and slow things down in your head and slowly, don't dart your head around, look around, and you're finding 5 things that you can see. Candle, microphone, webcam, computer. Oh my God, I sound like Trump when he's doing that interview. Okay, anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, all right? The desk, my notebook, the pencil, the hot candle. 3 things I can hear, all the background noise that I'm worried that you're hearing in this video, the crickets outside, the fan of the computer. 2 things I can smell, this candle, it's kind of a woodland rose kind of one. I can smell the kind of earthiness of the swamp outside, and one emotion I can feel. Well, right now, I feel gratitude. I'm glad that I have a chance to share this with you. I'm glad that you're here. But that's me in this moment. In that moment, it would have been, oh my goodness, I'm not sure. I honestly don't know if I could have looked around and found 5 things that would have really grounded me in the moment enough to really feel better. I'm not sure. Maybe so. But that is the grounding. It can help when you feel like you're out of control, etc. So let's go to a more advanced one here. This is from Live Well with Sharon Merton, who is an LCSW, and I'm afraid I do not know what that is an acronym for. Now, this is one which I think can be good for some people, can be bad for others. It can be something which I think, if it's not helpful, can lead you into kind of a phase lock loop, feedback. You keep doing the same thing over and over again. So first, but if you don't, for some people, it's going to help a lot. So first, you rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10. All right, I'm just going to read this off here with us all. Okay, sit up straight and tall. Place your feet on the floor, and don't do this thing. Okay, relax the shoulders. Okay, breathe slowly and deeply. How many windows are in the room? This room, I got 6. How many electrical outlets do I see? 2. These are things. What does the chair or couch that you're on feel like? Is it soft, rough, smooth? Well, this is a very plasticky kind of chair. Anything interesting coming in here? Did somebody try and get a hold of me? Nope. Okay. So what do you hear? Oh, excuse me. What color are your pants? Your shoes? What do you hear? What material is the floor made out of? Now, all of this really, again, grounding. The general idea, it doesn't have to be these specific things, okay? But these are things that are going to theoretically bring you into concentrating on something other than what is really stressing you out. To hopefully be thinking about something that is either very concrete or immediate, or as we get down to number 10 here, name TV shows that you can think of, name types of shapes that you can think of. All right, then after you've done a variety of things, okay, go through and rate your anxiety again. If it's still over a 5, repeat the grounding exercises. Now personally, I would say okay, 5, okay, sure, if you want. How about just, if you feel like you still need to go through the grounding exercises, do the grounding exercises. Seems like a plan to me. But nevertheless, those are a few basic ways, in the more immediate sense, of dealing with your anxiety. Let's see if anybody's popped up. Nope, nobody's popped up in the chat. Anybody wants to say anything in the chat, you're more than welcome to. Let's see. Because quite honestly, it's taken me less time to go through the stuff that I had prepared than I thought it would. So, let's see. What else do I have to work with here right now? Okay, I'm actually going to switch over to this one here. This is very specific things, and this can be useful. Oh, no, okay, that's way too big. But, so this is, they're calling it a coping calendar. And I was looking at this before, and this is fairly scattergun. But I would say that this, and I think I said this before, but this is a series of things that look at this and go, that speaks true to me. That seems like something that might help me. Okay, so for example, you might have, all right, so some of them, let's be really honest, are kind of, oh, thank you. I just needed to hear you tell me that I'd be fine, and I'm fine. Thanks, I'm cured. I do kind of like thanks, I'm cured sometimes, and I do try and avoid that. I know that I'm very Pollyanna, and I'm very like, oh, hey, it'll all be fine, because you know what? There's enough bad stuff going on out there, and we need to be able to help each other. We need to be able to try and make life work as easily for each other as best we can. Okay, so all right, so this is a list, as it describes itself as a list of 30 actions to look after ourselves and each other as we face this global crisis together. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of skip around here, and I'm going to say, okay, number 24 here, put your worries in perspective and try to let them go. Falls into that kind of thanks, I'm cured. But let's talk about a realistic strategy for that. I was talking a little bit about this earlier, and this is putting off your anxieties, making it so that it is something, remembering this is something that you do not have to worry about now, because there's plenty of time until whatever the situation they're worried about is going to happen happens. And there's only so much worrying that is going to be useful. I mean, let's be really honest, okay? Worrying can be a little bit useful. It's going to make you think of some of the things that, oh, okay, contingency plans. How's it going to work out? What's the best way to deal with things, okay? But if you put it in perspective, then those are reasonable worries. They're not reasonable worries like, oh my God, what if, what if the lizard people finally, reveal that they've been releasing the coronavirus the whole time and take over the world? Okay. Hopefully I'm not offending anyone with that there, but, you get the idea. But, trying to put your perspectives into worry. Okay, so let's kind of go from 24. 25, look for the good in others and notice their strengths. Now this one, okay, I think this is a good one. There's a lot of ways that this can be helpful just as far as looking out, looking to, how to put it? You can even look to people who you do not approve of and who you do not like and see a strength in them, okay? I will say that as somebody who analyzes in my mind, like most people do, I'm assuming on some level, the things, the political things that are going on, so on and so forth, there's certain times where I go, I really don't like what that person did at all, and it's going to make my life hard. But the way they did it, that was actually kind of impressive. And I could actually kind of learn something from the way that was. So again, notice strengths even in people who you may not approve of. And this, I'm saying this is a way of just remembering that you can humanize people, even people who you are deeply frustrated with. I've got a couple of coworkers I've been having to do this with recently. I've got some very anti-mask coworkers who, it's just frustrating. Let me just put it that way. Okay. Take small steps towards an important goal. This, of course, is the whole thing of just, do one little thing. I think that's great. Thank the people that you're grateful to and tell them why. Now, this kind of leads into a thing that we're talking a little bit about, and that is make a gratitude list. Doesn't hurt to do this at all. The simple reason is that, quite honestly, it can be hard to remember the things that you can actually be thankful for right now. Right now, okay, if you're here, you can be thankful that, you have the opportunity, if you want, to talk here. I mean, or not, okay? Or you can be thankful for the opportunity just to simply, if you're working, maybe you have the opportunity to work in a situation which is at least safe, okay? I am grateful that my opportunity to work is one where I'm outdoors and I can wear a mask and I can wear goggles and I don't have to really worry about, so much of stuff get in my face, which was, honestly, a bit of a concern. I've got a good 12 feet or more of distance 95% of the time at my job from anybody there. I've got a space that I feel comfortable enough in. I do not even leave it for lunch. I do not leave my little workspace for the hour and a half that I have to eat, or about an hour that I have to eat, because you know what? I feel safer there than anywhere else. And so I just pack my lunch, I stay down there, I'm good. I'm thankful for that. If you get to work from home, be grateful for that. If you've got somebody that you can have gratitude to, that is an important thing as well, because you can actually think about certain people who, so for me, it's easy to say, have gratitude to your parents because I'm a parent, right? And it's easy for me to say, so say to your parent, hey, you know what, I miss you. I'm really grateful that, I have this opportunity to be where I'm at, and, that you're where you're at, and that you're helping me here throughout the situation, whatever it is. Spend some time for that. It just never hurts. Oh, this chair's starting to squeak. Okay. All right. Other things. Make a plan to meet up with others again later in the year. Now, I hate to say this. I think this was published a little while ago, when later in the year was a bit of a realistic way of looking at it here in this country. So just make plans for when the vaccine is out. And progress is happening on the vaccine. It's not forever away. So connect with nature. This was the thing that I was talking about before. You know, one of the healthiest things that you can do, very low risk, is just go outside and breathe. And the way it says it here, breathe and notice life continuing, because life really does go on, and nature's really good about reminding you that it doesn't need you at all. Okay, so and number 30, I think that's kind of interesting. Remember that all feelings and all situations pass in time. And I think that's good. You know, sure, remember this too shall pass. That's always critical, because in the end, all of these worries, I mean, it's going to be a little ways away. But we'll be able to commiserate about this time. We'll be able to remember this time. We'll be able to say, so, you know, I mean, you see some of the memes. So what did you do during the coronavirus? You know, various things, you know, a lot of people are like, well, I saved the world by staying home, smoking pot, and playing video games all the time, you know? And I mean, honestly, if that's what you're doing, and you're legitimate lockdown and you're keeping people safe by doing that, then you know what? Yes, that is actually something to be proud of. And, you know, legit, okay? So whatever it is, we will be able to talk about this. We will be able to have that moment where we can start again. And whenever that happens, we're going to have some great stories to share with each other. Okay, some of it's going to be like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be telling the story of getting punched at the supermarket off and on for a long time. It's just, oh, you know, and here's the thing, it's one of those ones, I'm not proud of it. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying it just expresses where I'm at. Okay, so let's see. What else? I'm actually going to talk a little bit about people that I have been getting a hold of. So I don't know who managed to show up for the live stream, but I have been attempting to get a hold of some of my old friends. I have a friend of mine who is a teacher up in Athens, Georgia, and I hope she showed up. I don't know, but I have not talked to her as much as I would like to, and so I went ahead and I got in contact with her again. I have a friend of mine who I used to know when she was in college, and she doesn't live that far away. She just lives in the next big city around here, but you know, I honestly haven't seen her in forever, or her husband. I mean, I miss them both. Oh my God, it's been a long time. And this is the kind of thing where I would say take that time to go ahead and contact people. There's things that I need to be doing too. You know, I actually was lucky enough to see my friend Chuck yesterday, and I got to see his kid Salem for the first time. That kid is 6 months old. Okay, and that was the first time I've seen that kid. Chuck is a pretty good friend of mine. I used to see him on the regular, and it was just, I mean, we'd work together all the time, and it was just, and you know, now barely see him at all. I wish I could see him more. But I ran into him, and I've been contacting him here and there. Oh, speaking of which, does remind me, tomorrow night, if I do a live stream, I do not know exactly what the schedule is going to be. It will be a little bit later. There's two reasons for this. Well, there is a reason for this, and I'm going to point out the silver lining. The reason for this is I will be working during this time. I've got a tour which I have to host, which I'm looking forward to hosting, actually. Should be a lot of fun, which Chuck pointed me at. So that's another thing I'm grateful for. I've got work that I can do outdoors, freelance, that is going to be pretty good here. Okay. So, let's see. Oh, I think Mary Beth was here. Excellent. Okay. What else? Okay. All right. So, overall, just kind of make the plan for connecting with people. Spend the time to connect with people. You know, there's some folks in Oregon. I'm actually going to talk about, just briefly, my best friend in middle school, a guy by the name of Dan. He got married about a year ago now, and I have yet to meet his wife. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And that is not coronavirus. That's just me not keeping up with the old friends and that kind of thing. But that's the advantage of coronavirus, is that now is this moment where you can contact people. Hey, the world's on fire. How's about yours? Okay, not going to quote that any further, but you get the idea, right? Okay. Enjoy washing your hands. Remember all they do for you. Okay, this sounds like something that would work if you're on hallucinogens. Ooh, my hands, washing them, so wonderful. Okay, that doesn't sound like a legit one. I'm sorry. Write down 10 things you feel grateful for in life and feel why. I feel like we already hit this one before. Stay hydrated, eat healthy food, and boost your immune system. Okay, yes, actually, this is important. Okay, there's a lot of moments where your self-care needs to be just taking stock for a minute and seeing if you are actually taking care of yourself. Theoretically, if you're working from home, at least from here up, right? You're looking good. Your mustache is curly and all that, right? You've got the turtle wax for your bald head. So at least theoretically you're taking care of that. But if you're not working from home, you're not doing something like this where you've got cameras or whatever, then make sure you're spending the time to take care of yourself. It also leads to the next one, number 5. If you're stuck indoors, move and stretch. But do various other things. Stay hydrated. Drink water. Okay, don't just drink soda water here. Okay, I've got some tea right here. Right, there's actually my vanilla sleepy time tea. It's not hot tonight because it's hot enough in Florida tonight. Thank you very much. But yeah, stay hydrated, eat healthy food, and boost your immune system. Now, right now, again, to boost your immune system, very smart. If you can, take the vitamin D. Always a good plan. Okay, contact a neighbor or friend and offer to help them. Oh my God, that should be one of the things that is at the very top. Now, admittedly, there are times when this is stressful, and maybe it's not even the situation. Okay, so I'm going to share another story. This was early in the pandemic. I'm going to say this is probably around March, April, I'm not sure. I was riding my bicycle home from work, or actually no, I think I was visiting a friend. Anyway, and as I was riding my bike down the street, I hear this voice, "Help! Help!" I mean, as cheesy as the way that I'm saying it sounds, that's pretty much, kind of, at least in my memory now, what it sounded like to me. And I look around and I see this older gentleman who, and when I say older gentleman, probably early 60s would be my guess, who is on a front porch, who is and he's on the ground. So I'm not going to make it a long story, but I went over and I helped him. He ended up needing an ambulance. Not bad, but he could not stand up, was the short version. He could not get his equilibrium to the point where he could stand up. I do not know if it was medication or alcohol. It did not smell like alcohol, but whatever reason, ambulance had to be called. I called the ambulance after trying to help him considerably. I tried helping him up, picking him up, and getting him over to his house, because that wasn't his house. He was a neighbor of that doorstep that he was on. His house was the next one over, and he couldn't even get more than I don't think you could get more than 3 feet, quite honestly. So help your neighbor if you can. That's an emergency situation, but there's a lady around the corner who I haven't seen in a little while. I want to go check on her. She's a nice little old lady. I think my immediate neighbor knows her. So I'm gonna, text my immediate neighbor, because she's taking care of some things right now. But I'm gonna text her when I get a chance and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about that person, because I've seen her out there. She's asked for help with things that I wasn't able to help her with, but now I might be able to. I want to see if she's doing okay. So if you can, definitely do that. But the big reason for this is that right now it's really important to build your support network. And as much as I talk about the support network that you've got on your contact list and your Facebook friends and your Instas and all that kind of thing, another important part of your support network is your neighbors. Some of you folks are in, new living situations. You've moved, in with your parents because of coronavirus, or you just happen to, have a new place that you've gotten into at the same time, or, you took advantage of the fact that, lots of places are empty right now and you found a better place to be than you're at. But if that's the case, definitely spend some time going out and getting to know those neighbors. And one of the best ways is just to go out and see if there's something that you can help them with. For me, I haven't really got a whole lot. I've got neighbors with dogs, and I've occasionally gotten mail that was addressed to them that came to me, and so I bring it over to them and I chit chat with them, and I'm like, oh hey, But if you can, do that. And if you're already doing that with your neighbor, take an extra moment to do it again and contact them some more. Okay. Number 7, share what you're feeling and be willing to ask for help. Now, this, of course, is always a good thing if you can learn how to do it. So I think that's pretty general, though. Doesn't feel real specific enough to be a real helpful one. Take 5 minutes to sit still and breathe properly. Repeat regularly. I think that's always good advice. Call a loved one to catch up and really listen to them. And I think this is good. So my wife talked to her brother earlier today, and I don't know. I mean, I think that they had a pretty good conversation. It's sometimes hard, but it sounded like it, and that's always good. I should definitely probably I should call. There's a couple people I want to call. Like, hopefully by the next time I do one of these, like next week, I will talk to Kurt. I want to talk to Kurt, I think. I don't know if I can get a hold of Kurt right now, but I think I want to get a hold of Kurt. Okay, so, moving on. Get good sleep, no sleeps before bed or when waking up. Okay, now this was something which I've talked a little bit about earlier, was you can do various things to try and have a good sleep, good sleep habits. Just briefly, try, one of the things, if you can set your phone so that it doesn't emit blue light. A lot of phones have a setting now for comfort view or night view or something like that. That is one thing that will help some. That helps the light that is going to your eyes be something that is going to keep you awake as much. However, your brain is still doing stuff. So if you can, put the phone down before, a little while before going to bed. I would, in fact, if you can, I would recommend getting a book to read. They are still available. You can get them all sorts of places. You don't even have to go to a store to buy them. And there's a number of things, a number of good books that you might want to look into, and it wouldn't hurt. I mean, I honestly find that having a book of some sort can be quite grounding. Okay, so number 11. Notice 5 things in the world that are beautiful in the world around you. This is a variation of the anxiety thing. Okay, helpful and bit. Okay, immerse yourself in a new TV show, book, or podcast. Did you need that written down? Okay, I didn't think you need that one written down, but if you do, apparently number 12, there you go, there it is. Respond positively to everyone you interact with. Oh my God, okay. Really? Okay, I'm going to say this. Sure, give it a try. It's worth trying. It is actually something that if you can do, great. I have trouble seeing it working a lot of the time. Again, I'm the person who does get in people's faces more than I should, so it's hard for me to conceive of this, but okay. But try, at least, how's this? If it can't be that, if you can't say something kind, don't say nothing at all. That's what I've been working on recently. It's working a little bit better than just trying to respond positively to everything. Although that did make me chuckle. It made me think of the old Jim Carrey movie Yes Man, where he literally agreed to say yes to anything that came along. And I mean, that's a whole nother experiment. But hey, you know what? Life's interesting these days. Play a game that you enjoyed when you were younger. Okay, so this can be anything from breaking out a console. Okay, so let's actually talk about this. I'm going to get techie on you. I'm going to talk about this realistically for a second here. So, one way you can do that is by downloading an emulator. If you have a computer, you can download an emulator to your computer. There are certain emulators that you can get for your phone as well. And then you can look up ROMs. Now, ROMs are, so short versions, let me back up. An emulator is something that runs old video game hardware. So you can find an emulator for everything from the Nintendo, the old original Nintendo, the Super Nintendo. The ones for the Nintendo 64 are kind of hinky here and there. There's good ones for all sorts of the PlayStations, that kind of thing. So if there's a game that you haven't played in a decade or more, and you're like, wow, I'd really like to play that game, then you can do a little bit of searching. Okay, if you're on a computer, you do searching for whatever game system it was, emulator. For me, I'm ancient, so it'd be Atari 2600 emulator, right? Okay, and then I might look for Atari 2600 Defender ROM, okay, because Defender was one of the cartridges. Very simple version of Defender, mind you. Or Frogger, how's that? Frogger ROM. Okay, so you might go Frogger ROM, Atari 2600, and you'd find it, and you'd search it, you'd download it, and you'd be able to play that game. And that, I think, could be a thing that could be very, useful. Now, there's other ways of doing it too. If you happen to have a Nintendo Switch, of course, you can download most of those things and sort of a whole retro collection. Lots of games have retro collections, so if you can't go through the whole process of downloading the ROMs and downloading an emulator, then just get one of the retro collections and play that. Works just as good, and also I believe actually a little bit more legal. Okay, so number 15, make some time to progress on a project that matters to you. This sounds like number whatever it was, take a small step towards an important goal. Okay, either way, yes, still good advice. Rediscover your favorite music that really lifts your spirits. Okay, this is one that can be really good. So, High Fidelity, movie from I think the 90s, John Cusack. One of the things that I found interesting was it's a bunch of guys who work at a record store. And one of the things that one of the characters is doing to kind of cope with the stress in their life, and I believe it's John Cusack, who's rearranging his record collection. And he's got this giant record collection. I mean, floor to ceiling, bookcase, shelves, all that kind of thing, and he's rearranging it. And I forget what it was, it's like, so I rearranged my record collection, alphabetical, chronological, and I forget what it was. It was something, but it was something like, something that was more touching. It was like, like the memory or something like that, or whatever was associated with that kind of thing. And the other guy's like, oh. And that is actually one way of doing that. So, there's a lot of things you can do. First of all, as I say, connect with that music. Listen to that song that makes you feel better. For me, right now, it varies. Okay, right now it's the old 90s song from the Indigo Girls, Closer to Fine. So that's helpful to me. For other people, it could be something else entirely. You might be, Smash Mouth, I don't care, but it doesn't matter. If you've got some song that was just really good for you, or maybe it's one that just doesn't even have to be when you were younger. With as a kid, it could be with your kid. I know that I occasionally like to think about songs that I listened to when I was raising Zoe. So and that's just lots of good things you can have there. But also back to the organizing your music collection thing. This can be a way of finding some order, finding something in your life that you can control. Okay, remember, we're talking about in some of these other streams, there's certain things you can control, certain things that you can't control. And like the Serenity Prayer says, okay, it's really useful for certain really stressful things like this. Remember to understand the things you can accept. To understand that there are things that you can change, to understand there are things you cannot change, to accept the things you cannot change, to change the things that you can, and to know the difference between the two. And sometimes really one of the hardest things for anxiety is knowing the difference between the two and understanding that there are certain things you can change, okay, and cannot change. You can't change, how fast the vaccine comes along. You can't change who's wearing masks, who's not. You can do some things we were talking about earlier to maybe affect your COVID bubble, so that maybe you're quarantining with people who are behaving in a fashion which is safe for you. But those are things which you can change to some extent, but things that you can truly change are things that are simple. You can organize your record collection. Okay, so you don't have a record collection. I don't have a record collection. Well, okay, actually, yeah, we've got a record collection. It's about that big. Okay, and I mean, that's, considering how thick records are, that's a decent collection. Nevertheless, not really going to give me a whole lot of therapy to organize that. Maybe. The DVD collection, actually, probably, I would not mind arranging that at this point. It'd be kind of nice to kind of go through and do all of that. I still have all the old DVDs from that I bought at this point, some of them 20 plus years ago now. So that could be therapeutic. For you, go through your iTunes collection, right? Or whatever your music collection is, however you're storing that. Go through that and make some playlists, something that make, and just, for what I like to do sometimes is just kind of, come up with like a feeling or a word or something like that has to do with that moment that I'm in, and be like, okay, everything that has to do with this moment is going into one playlist. So I put together playlists that have weird names like Point. Why? Because those are songs that make me think of a time when I really knew what was going on, when I was like, when I, might say on point, or I had a point, or whatever it is, but it was like really, was there, okay? So that's what that is. But, various things like that. But organizing anything that you have can be your game collection, if you're a gamer, whatever. Do things like that. A bit of organization, that is something that you can control and put order into your universe. Okay, so, let's see. Learn something new or do something creative. Okay, this is the whole thing. I do want to say this, though. There's two ways of approaching this. One is we are in a coronavirus world where jobs are rough and so on and so forth, and you might be looking at a side hustle. If you are, okay, definitely go ahead, do your side hustle, but that is not what this is. Okay, this is something that is for you. Okay, this is, having pages in a blank book that you can fill, that you can write on whatever you want to. This is, drawing. This is singing. This is something that you can do that is creative for you. All right, because it's not something that is for someone else. It's not something to make money. You're not trying to impress anyone. It is simply for your own sake. And that's an important thing to remember, in that certain creative endeavors, it's easy in hustle culture to just be like, oh yeah, no, and you show something to somebody, right? And they love your work, and they're like, oh man, you should put that on Etsy, and maybe you should, and maybe you shouldn't. Really kind of depends on what you're getting from it. If you're getting something out of it that is mere meaningful to you in here, that will be lost by turning into a commercial venture, then for goodness sakes, do not turn into a commercial venture. If, on the other hand, you are starving and you need money, then maybe turn that thing that was fun into money if you can. And I hate to say that, but that is kind of the way life is these days right now. So, and if you can, then, and it's something that you still enjoy doing, then that's something else to have gratitude for. Find a fun way to do an extra 15 minutes of physical activity. So this can vary. For me, actually, I did this a few days ago. I was at work, and I went ahead and I took some of the bricks that were stacked up all kind of randomly, and I kind of dug out an area, and so I made just kind of a little an area where I used the bricks as pavers in my workspace there, and that was shoveling and moving around, all that kind of thing. By the time I was pretty sweaty. So, and if you can do something like that, and it doesn't need to be stuff like I do. Preferably something that is, a little more relaxing in the overall. But, maybe just a nice little walk. If you one of the things you're doing is take the dog for a walk, take the dog for an extra loop around a couple of blocks, whatever it may be. Try not to run the dog ragged if you got an old dog. Okay, do 3 acts of kindness to help others, however small. Now, I think this is really good. I think it's hard to find that moment. I think it can be hard to, come up with 3 acts of kindness. But yeah, okay, let me see. So, for example, examples. Human being bros. Go to, okay. There was the guy who is he's an somewhat elderly gentleman, not that elderly, but he's in his probably 50s, I guess. But he was described in the post as being elderly, and he would take out the trash for a person who was coronavirus compromised and not going outside at all. He'd take the trash out to the curb for them, and then when it was all done, he would take it back, and then he'd spray the whole thing down, so that they could use it. And that's one small thing. And that's not that small of a thing, but it's a fairly small thing. But if you can come up with 3 things in a day that you can do for kindness of others, then do so. Sometimes it can just be like, and sometimes it doesn't have to be anything big. Sometimes it can just be like, you kind of, it's hard to smile at people now with the masks on, but just kind of nod, or whatever it may be. Something where you go, it's okay. Even though that's a small thing. Make some time for self-care. Do something kind for yourself. Always good advice. Always good advice. Bath bombs, not a bad idea. Okay, I'm not trying to say the bath bomb industry is a good thing at all. But if you've got something like that where you can just be like, you know what, I'm going to pamper myself and I'm going to take a nice long soak, or I'm going to go whatever it may be. I'm gonna get myself some nice makeup. Right now everything kind of melts off in the heat, but so do something kind to you, and truly something that is not just like a quick little thing. Hopefully something that can be a long-term ritual, ideally. Then, of course, you can also, number 21, send a letter or message to someone who you can't be with. Find positive stories in the news and share those with others. I'm doing that, right? And there's, of course, the Top of the Coronavirus subreddit that has the good news sticky. Have a tech-free day. Okay, you know what? Bye-bye. But yeah, have a tech-free day and just disconnect. And that, honestly, is never a bad idea either. Okay, so that is going through that whole dang list. But let's be honest, I hadn't gone through all of that yet. And it doesn't hurt to kind of cover a lot of these things. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit more about the Coronavirus Anxiety Workbook. Now, this is the one that was linked to earlier in the Good News Sticky, but let's just kind of talk about a few of the things here. Now, one of the things that I want to get through is I want to talk about number 9 here. This is reduce anxiety, or excuse me, on page number 9 here. Reduce anxiety with thought challenging, because this is one of the things that, at least for me, not everyone, but for me, has done the most good. All right, so let's scroll through this here. All right, so now, thought challenging. This is when you have started to get to the point where you're going, okay, if I go outside, then I'm definitely going to catch coronavirus and I'm definitely going to die. That is, yeah, that's making the worst thing happen in your brain that possibly can. So, now this is cognitive behavioral therapy for reducing anxiety. Now there's the ABCDE technique. That's a good one too. I'm going to switch over to the think technique first, just because, I don't know, I find it slightly more along the lines of the way that I naturally work. But let's go ahead and do this. All right, so I'm going to roll think technique up to the top here. Okay, so the first thing, when you start thinking, oh my God, if I go outside, I'm going to get coronavirus and die, the first thing you think, is this thought 100% true? What are the facts? What is opinion? Okay, now obviously if you know that you're going to die, that's opinion. What are the facts? Coronavirus is out there. Now we talked about risk. A lot of this is what I was talking about before. Managing your risk. Remember, all right, I'm going to go through this just real briefly again. All right, I'm going to talk about this. 5 things, okay? It's going to help you remember whether or not this is something that, you should be freaked out about if you have to go do something, okay? Benefits, all right? Is this something that has a strong benefit? Does it have a strong necessity to do? If not, then maybe you can skip it. Maybe you can find an alternate way to do it. Number 2, look at the amount of risk that is involved in the single action. Can you do something to reduce that risk? Can it be something that you do outdoors instead of indoors? A variety of things like that. Look at what the local infection rate is, what, how likely you are to catch it in your area right now. If it is a point where it's going on everywhere, then maybe it's a little bit more of a concern. If at the same time the infection rate is low right now, people are socially distancing a bit, then don't worry about it so much. Weirdly enough, as much as Florida has been bad, we have times where I do not understand. The only thing I can really chalk it up to is the fact that in Florida we're just outdoors more. And I think that's why there has been less infection in Florida than I had expected. And maybe that's why there was more in New York, was that people are more tightly packed in and they're living in close places. All right, let's see. So then, 1, 2, 3, what are the benefits? What's the risk of this individual action that you're taking? What's the local infection rate? Number 4, what is your personal vulnerability? Remember, there are things that reduce your vulnerability: taking vitamin D, having O blood type, being of not having a lot of comorbidity factors, being younger in age. These are all things that are going to reduce your own personal risk. But do not also consider your personal risk. Also consider number 5, which is the risk of the other people in your bubble, in whatever your bubble may be, your housemates, your roommates, the people you work with. Consider the vulnerability of them as well as you're going through these things. So, but the point is that you can actually realistically look at your risk. You can look at it as, am I catastrophizing? Am I making it so much more worse than it could be? Because if you are, you don't have to. You can take a look and be like, okay, this could be something that I can handle. Also, just remember, there's a lot of stuff out there that is opinion that comes across as fact. I try and remember to remind you that some of the stuff that we get as science is still just, it's science. It's not opinion, but it is, there's papers that will disagree with each other. Some of them will say, this is fine and this isn't. And so, the things change. So take it slowly. Take it slow. Take the larger consensus of the scientific community than just one random paper too, definitely. The next thing, when you're having some thought, is paying attention to this thought helpful to you or others? So if you are thinking about something that is just going to stress you out all the time, then let it go. It's not a helpful thought to you. There's no reason to be spending your time and your brain power and your energy and your emotional heart on something that is not helpful. So if you're thinking about something, if you're thinking about, for example, let's see, going, when you have packages that arrive, okay, well, what happened to all those packages before they got there? That's not helpful, okay? It really doesn't help, okay? If it disturbs you that much, then there's a very clear and easy answer. There's a very easy thing that you can do to take care of it, and that is spray them down. Spray it down with some disinfectant. You're good. Not a problem. It's fine. Thinking about all those other things, not useful to you, not useful to other people. And honestly, there's a lot of news that you can read. You can get stuck in this news cycle where you're reading so much stuff that is just going to drive you. Oh my God. It's going to make you really freak out. So don't do that. Check your information diet. Okay. Next one. Is the thought you're having inspiring? Okay, now, of course, most of these kinds of thoughts that we're going to be having, if we're having to go through this process of asking ourselves these questions, are not going to be inspiring. So, does it have the opposite effect? Quite often, yes. If it is something that demoralizes you, then go, oh, no, that's not something I need. Okay. Next one, is it necessary? Is it important for you to focus on the thought? Again, this only really applies to certain things, like, certain work situations, things like that. That's where it's necessary for you to think about it, for you to deal with it. Most of the other ones, don't borrow trouble. Don't find something to worry about that you don't need to worry about. Just let it go. Lastly, is the thought kind? And this goes back to the thing that I was talking about before, try and have kind thoughts. Try and remember that, as you go, that person, they've got coronavirus, I really want them to stay as far away as possible. Well, remember that they're not just a vector for infection, they're a person too. So, try and have a kind thought. That's something which I need to remember myself more, quite honestly. All right, then there's this other technique. Oh, let's scroll the other way. This is the more. All right. Now, and this is the ABCDE technique. Okay. So, A, attention. When you feel distressed, stop what you're doing and pay attention to your inner dialogue. Okay. What is going on? What is your mind telling you? Why are you feeling this way? Okay. So, for example, when I was in the grocery store and I was starting to feel very freaked out and stressed out, if I had thought that, what was my inner dialogue telling me? Well, it was telling me probably that I was in a dangerous situation. That seems about right. Okay. So, number 2, believe. Do not automatically believe your thoughts. Now remember, you can trust yourself, but also remember that yourself has got a lot of anxiety going on probably, and that's why you're looking at this, right? Okay, so maybe it's not the best thing to trust all those thoughts right away. All right, so again, a challenge. Diffuse anxiety by broadening your focus. Think about the bigger picture. Is a thought fact or opinion? Okay, now also look at it this way. What's another way of thinking about the same thing if you're feeling calmer? Okay, because there's a couple of ways that you can look at stuff, right? As I'm going through some of this stuff here, right? We can say that it is safer to be outdoors. Okay, well, I could also say it's not safe to be indoors, but that's not true. Okay, it is not as safe to be indoors, and it is safer to be outdoors. But really, what's a better way of thinking of it? A better way of thinking of it is it's safer to be outdoors, not I'm unsafe indoors. What you need to think is when I'm indoors, I need to be taking all the precautions I can. When I'm outdoors, I'm safer. So that's a way of thinking about it in a way that if you were calmer, you'd think, okay, it's safer to be outdoors. Not like, I'm indoors, oh my God. Okay, so then D, discount. All right, now this is one of the things, one of the reasons I worry a little bit about A, B, C, D, E is that it kind of just goes, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. So discount. Acknowledge that anxiety has been dominating in your thinking and let the unhelpful thoughts go. And really this is just this is helpful for some people. This is kind of saying, I think in a way where, I get stressed out. And, when I think that way, I do things. It's kind of like saying, I don't always think right. Okay. But, honestly, anxiety will mess with you. So I know for me at least sometimes this is true. So you gotta sometimes go, okay, you know what? I'm only thinking this because I'm feeling this anxiety. So should just let that go. Sometimes you can. For me, I have a little bit more luck with that than a lot of people, but that also came from a lot of years of just kind of training myself, training my brain not to think about certain things. I've had a lot of stress here and there. Let's see. Explore options. E. What would be helpful to focus on right now? What options are available? And this is one of those things where I would actually say the ABCDE technique, you combine that with the grounding technique. I'm going to pull up the grounding technique here real quick again. All right. That's something that you can do right there. Not hard to see that. All right. So those are a lot of things you can focus on. Also, look at your other options, other things you could be doing at that time. If you're in a situation where it's just going to be stressful, then maybe don't spend as much time in that situation. Sometimes that's a possibility and sometimes that's not. Okay, so thought challenging tips. Writing or typing out your thought process is more powerful than trying to do it in your head. And actually, yes, I'd entirely recommend this. Get out a sheet of paper and go, I'm thinking this, it leads to 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 this. And sometimes you're going to tell a story of just like, oh my God, this is the worst possible thing. But you'll even realize as you're writing it down, this might be a little bit exaggerated. Hopefully, you'll realize that. Hopefully, you'll realize that as you're going through all this and you're actually having to put pen to paper, going, maybe that's not really something to concern myself with. And that's going to be the first step, is to go through those and see what is good. Let's see. This particular one recommends a thought diary app. I have no idea if it's good or not. Most recommendations by this workbook have been, I'd say pretty good. I'd give them a 7 out of 10 for most of the recommendations. If you're not used to paying much attention to your inner dialogue, thought challenging might feel unnatural. And this is one of the things. So keep in mind that, for me, it wasn't like, the inner dialogue was something that, what meant I was all touchy-feely. You want to know where I learned about inner dialogue? Watching Magnum P.I. Yeah, Tom Selleck played private detective who had, and he talked about the little voice in his head that was telling him these things. And, I understood at that point in time that, even manly men have inner dialogues, not that that was too much of a concern, but, still. But yeah, it's fine, really, seriously. Inner dialogues are a thing that are going to help you kind of go through, thinking about your thoughts, thinking about the way that it's happening is something that is going to help you just say, okay, is what that voice saying something I should listen to or not? It's pretty straightforward. Now, the other thing is that it can also be something that is hard to do when you're in the moment. When you're in the moment, don't be trying to do this so much, all right? Do something more like this, all right? Because this is the kind of thing that's going to help you really right at that time. So, when you're not in that time, spend, when you can be calm and you can be doing some things to kind of really build, for lack of a better way of putting it, build your own internal emotional support. Then you can be working on stuff like this. Okay. Let's see. I want to go back up here. And I want to talk about this again, because this is an important thing about worry. Okay? And it is very easy to be concerned about things that you really don't need to be concerned about. And so it's good to let it go when you can. So let's see here. You can see these things that are in your control and are outside of your control. So I'm going to go through this again, all right? And this is for the people in the cheap seats, okay, which includes me, because I keep doing this stuff over and over again, all right? I keep forgetting. Let me put it this way. I don't forget, but I still spend emotional energy wanting so hard to have an effect on these things. But these are things that are outside of my control, and I have to accept that. Okay, so number one, other people's decisions. Okay, I saw the comic. I don't know if you saw it. It actually pretty much summed up my feelings and yet made me so angry. And it's like the guy was asking, what possible reason could you have for not wearing a mask? And the other guy is, no, wait, I don't think you understand. And then there's like just a long pause of silence for a whole panel. And then it's like, I'm this stupid, and there's nothing that you can legally do to force me to wear a mask. And the other person is just like, oh, I'm so exhausted. Okay, the reason why you're exhausted, okay, is understandable, but you don't have to be that exhausted, because you cannot control other people's decisions, okay? You're not the police, you're not the government, you can't do that. You can't control other people's health, all right? You can do things to try and protect people around you, but in the end, you can't control their comorbidity factors. You can't control what they do. All you can do, you can't control the health of the people in the store, all right? All you can do is take care of the things that are inside your small area. You can't control the news. You can't control what the news is reporting from day to day, all right? You want to know the truth? That article that I pulled up, that was the first time I have actually looked at something from CNN in a while. I generally don't get my news through that source. I get most of my news primarily, quite honestly, through late night comedians, through, well, mostly Google News and the internet when I'm really trying to keep on top of something. And, honestly, a lot of Reddit, and that's how I found out about, how I found out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, So, things like that. So maybe be careful how you're getting your news. Be careful what you're bringing in. If you are getting it through some place like Reddit, even consider what subreddits you want to be bringing in. There's ones that are not going to be good for you, and there's ones that are going to be okay. So other things you can't control. You are not the government. Okay, you're not the president. If you are the president and you're listening to this, F you. Leave. I'm sorry, that's as political as I'm going to get, but I really do think that you have messed this up. Okay, enough of that. But you can't control the government's actions, all right? You're not the government, okay? So just do what you can. Now, there are certain things you can do. Remember to vote, okay? Voting. Remember, if you can get involved in some activism, there's plenty of things to be involved in right now. We're in a situation where we might very easily need to be calling upon these support networks that I've been talking about the people, your neighbors, and also your friends, your online friends, and actually, hopefully, you can do some activism. You can't control the government directly, but maybe some activism might help some. Okay, so nothing you can't control. Unless you're on the school board, you can't control anything about the schools opening or closing. What you can do, again, is control how you're going to react to it. I'm going to point out that there's 3 ways that I've noticed in my experience, at least recently. You have basically people just sending their kids to school, people who are homeschooling on an individual basis, and people who are sort of forming, for lack of a better way of putting it, homeschooling groups where they're sort of all working together. I have field trips of homeschooling groups that come through my work fairly often right now. Okay. So, other things you can't control is the state of the healthcare system. All about that I'm going to say is there is, of course, still activism and voting, and that may help you feel a little bit better about it, but what you're doing right now is pretty much all you can do. Let's see, you can't do much about flights and holidays being canceled or major life events being canceled. Some of them are not, some of them are. And just remember that what you can do is some of the stuff you can just make plans for later, and that can be hard. Let's see, other things you can't control. You can't control the traffic. And actually, I said this before when I was reading this, but I think traffic is a good metaphor for this. You can get mad at the traffic if you want. You can get mad at the way people move around. But the simple truth of the matter is this, is that traffic is traffic, and it's going to move the way that it moves. So if you get mad at it, you're just spending your energy. It's tilting at windmills. So it's not something to spend your energy on. You can't control public transport. You can control whether or not you ride it, hopefully. You can't control aging. And this is really one of the things, again, it's kind of like traffic. There's just certain things that, yes, are outside of your ability to control. Deal with it. It's the way that it is. That being said, I want to give a couple of special considerations to some older folks here, because it's not true in a lot of cases. There's a lot of, fairly healthy folks who are going out and that kind of thing. But there are some people who, quite frankly, are of an age where they may, just from natural causes, are not going to live or not going to have significant quality of life in the time that it takes for this to be over. And so if that's the case, then, maybe that's one of the ones where you go, okay, there are certain risks that are available, or that are reasonable, certain risks that, you can take. And it's hard. But, I almost look at a person who's going to die in, a short period of time as the same situation, or, more urgent situation even, than the college kids who need to go out and party. So if there's some way of giving them that opportunity, yeah. Okay, but I digress. You can't control aging. You can control how you react to it. You control how the people in your life who are aging are affected. So you can control some things. You can't control the weather. Can't control the weather. Don't know anybody who can control the weather. Okay, so things you can control. Now, some of this is, of course, just the flip side of stuff that I mentioned before, so I've already mentioned it here, but one of them. Okay, building resilience. Building resilience in this case just means having a support network, also having enough mental well-being that you don't feel like you're just screaming in the darkness, pissing in the wind, however you want to put it. Hopefully you've got some people who will help you and listen to you and care about you. And, even if it's just coming here and talking to me, then, good. Do so, please. Okay. Things that are within your control. Following proper latest information and advice. Now, I do want to say this. This is grain of salt. It's harder to do right now in the United States than it should be. That is because apparently the CDC information is sometimes politicized, sometimes not. I think right now it is fairly accurate coming out of the CDC, but it varies. What I would say at this point in time is look at the larger focus of things, see what the advice is, and honestly, if I would say that if you want just one source for general advice, not information, is Dr. Fauci. He seems to be pretty on the ball with this stuff. So that would be a good one. Nothing. You can focus on what's important to you. Okay, now I was talking about this list before because if you can do any of these things during coronavirus and learn how to do these things in this kind of stressful situation, you'll be in a great situation for later on. Okay, so but yeah, focus on what's important to you. And I swear, most people don't know what's important to them. You could spend, seriously, write it down, spend some time, think about it. You've got, hopefully you've got a little bit of time and energy for that. What's really important to you? For me, took me a while. I literally lived in the mountains, alone, off the grid, for 3 years, figuring out what was important to me. And it took me a fair amount of that time to really sort it out. Admittedly, a certain amount of it was just like the first period of time was just healing from the last mess that I'd been through. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to get through. So other things you can control. Your information diet. We talked about this before. I talked about where I get my news from. Very limited sources. I do check on my sources when I see something that's like, wait, that doesn't sound right. So do that as well. Other things that are in your control. Your routine. Now this is, one time I was streaming and one of my friends, said I was sounding like Jordan Peterson when I'm talking about routine. But yeah, routine, having some kind of routine is good. Now, when I was talking about building routine before, I would say build routine in small steps, build routine in the things that feel good for you. For me, what I would recommend is, have a routine, spend that time, 5 minutes in a situation like, for me, when I'm lighting the fire at work in the morning, all right, I take a moment where I think about what I'm grateful for, where I take some deep breaths, and I meditate. And then I light the fire, and I light the fire with good intention. So that's part of a routine that I have. It's not much of a routine, but it is a routine that I have. Now, I don't do it every day. I do it as part of my work thing, but I do have other routines. And these are things that you can control. For some people, routine really does help. For other people, routine is deadly. Just varies. Relaxation. You can control your relaxation. There's a lot of things you can do to actively take relaxation. Exercises, if that's not working, and I haven't said this yet this stream, but it is something that is worth noting. If you need actual mental help, go out, get that mental help. Doesn't hurt. Now's the time for it. I mean, quite honestly. I mean, you can go to a mental health professional and say, I need help right now. And when this is all over, you can say, I'm fine. And they'll be like, okay, you're fine. I mean, most of them will. And you're not admitting weakness. You're just saying, this is crazy right now. And I would like to be able to deal with this better. Okay. And that's something I really want to stress. Okay. Going and asking for help of any sort. Okay. But I really want to take the stigma away from asking for mental health help. Because even if you're the type of person, and this is not a good way to be, pardon me the judgment on that, but even if you're the type of person who goes, oh yeah, that's just for people who are like, weak and really messed up and all that kind of thing. But even if you think that, here is the truth, okay? It is not just for that, especially right now. Right now, it is an extra tool that can make you stronger. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? It can make it so that you have more well inside of you, more spoons, as some people put it, however you want to put it. You've got more strength if you have a little bit of mental health help. And that is incredibly useful. If you're trying to be there for other people, then let someone else be there for you too. And don't think that this is just something that is just like, that it's just something that is a weakness, that it's something that is a failing. It's not. It's just something that is going to help you be stronger in a situation that, oh my goodness, have you seen the stress of what's going on? So, relaxation therapy, I'm going to say, another good one. You can control whether or not you go to therapy. And there's a number of ways you can do therapy. You can do it in person. 5 cups is not a bad way to do it. That is not professional. The quality of the help is very different, but it can be something where you can do that. If, on the other hand, you're in a situation where you need deep therapy, you need real help, you're considering self-harm, please call a suicide prevention hotline. There's a lot of things out there that are available. The coronavirus support subreddit has got a lot. Let me actually pull that up real quick just so that we've got that here. And it's taking forever right now. Okay. All right. And counseling. Oh, there's, okay. Where is it? Okay, well, let's go to here. There is... Here's a bunch of hotline numbers. Okay, so here's a number of phone numbers for the United States. Okay, so 1-800-273-8255-TALK. Also has special for veterans, also has Spanish language support. There's youth-specific services if you just want to do an online chat. I honestly know that for me, that actually would be something, that would be a lot easier, would be to just have an online chat with some people. There's a link there. You can text HOME to 741-741, and that's a text line. There's also a transgender lifeline here. I'm very glad to see that. That's extremely useful. We've got some numbers for the EU, but yeah, I would recommend taking a look at this if you have, if you're feeling anything that serious. Okay, so let's wrap this up here. Okay, so other things that are within your control. We talked a little bit about this before when we were going over the calendar. You can of course eat well, you can exercise, and cultivate connection. Now I'm going to talk about the eating well and exercising. Yes, please do that. It would be really handy. It would be good if you get in those habits, okay? And, if you can, seriously, pat yourself on the back, okay? If you can do any of this kind of stuff, if you can, do that, if you can, do that walk around the block, even if you weren't doing it before or you were doing it a while ago, do it again. Do the walk around the block, and then, seriously, pat yourself on the back because you're doing something good for yourself in the middle of all of this. In the middle of all of this, and that is incredible. Same thing true with eating well. If you can, switch your diet to something which is going to make you, feel better. Definitely remember that too much junk food, too much, garbage is going to make you feel bad. So help that. That makes a big difference. And again, if you can do that now, because this is a really hard time to be doing any stuff that's really useful to you. But if you can remember to do that, please do so. Again, cultivating connection. Can't hammer this one enough. All right, neighbors, your contact list, your Facebook friends, your Instas, your whoever it is, okay? People who you just kind of randomly flirted with, 8 years ago. Be like, hey, how's it going? I remember when I was passing through, Nebraska, and I saw you, and whatever it was. I haven't been through Nebraska in years, but you get the idea. Seeking and offering support. Okay, seriously, this is that thing I was talking about before. Don't feel like, getting actual real help is a weakness. It's not, okay? Especially in a time like this. This is an unusual circumstance. What you're getting is not, it's not happening because you're weak. You're gaining extra strength. Do that, okay? Even if it's just talking to friends honestly about what's going on, and hopefully not talking to that friend who's like just always just got the worst thing to say about any of it. Hopefully something better. Why is my webcam on? That's bizarre. Okay. And then lastly, we have here voting and activism. I talked about that earlier. Voting and activism is always important because, well, there's not really any way that we're going to make this a whole lot better unless we start asking for better from the people who are running things right now. Right now we're in a situation where it is simply just a mess, and trying to make it so that we can actually talk to each other and live in a society that we feel comfortable with and we've got friends. Yeah. All right, so thank you to everyone who's been here. Again, I'm just going to say this. Please, if you can, join in the chat sometime along. Call me up on the phone. Talk. I plan this stuff out, so I've got stuff to talk about and all that kind of thing. But I can only do that for so long. I think hopefully sometime soon here, maybe we will be doing a live stream. Be playing a game of some sort. I'm more of a board gamer, so don't expect a whole lot of, with thumbsticks and that kind of thing. But yeah. Anyway, again, thank you for everyone who is here. Thank you, even if you're just here for a few minutes. And thanks for coming around. Remember, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I do hope that I will see you again soon, probably tomorrow night, probably a little bit later. The upshot of it being later is that with any luck, we will have a chance to talk to some people on the West Coast this time. All right. Well, good night. Yeah, I'm just going to sit here as I'm waiting for that to catch up, just so that I don't end the stream too soon. So, good night.